This video is sponsored by Raycon. More on them later. I refuse to believe that I'm alone in thinking that Captain Falcon deserves his own game. It just makes too much sense given how well he carries himself in Smash Bros, and I'm sure Nintendo could find a kind of game concept that gets the most out of his physique and talent for punching. The more I think about it, the more I can imagine a Streets of Rage style brawler with maybe an open world so that Cap can bring his Blue Falcon along for the ride. And really, there's so much here that I'm shocked that Nintendo have never given the Smash Bros character a larger share of the spotlight. I think it'd be a pretty fun game. 17 years. But in the meantime, there's a long list of other side characters who are in dire need of a solo outing away from the looming shadow of a slightly less interesting main character. We live in an age where we keep getting origin films for characters who were never the focus of the original story, so why can't we have a similar sort of branching out with video games? There's so many unique personalities and skill sets just waiting for some increased focus that the video game industry can't really complain about not having enough ideas for new games. Like, just look around a bit and stop making sequel after sequel. Diversify your portfolio a little bit, you cretins. What? What's that? I can't really hear you talk about what character you think needs to be here instead of the ones I've chosen, because this video is sponsored by Raycon and their premium brand of wireless earbuds that are so good at blasting high quality, crystally clear sound into my brain that I don't really have time to worry about petty matters like that. The sound quality's so good, it feels like almost like a live concert. You know, back when those existed. It's not a problem though, because Raycon are really well suited to give you a spectacular alternative, because these high quality wireless earbuds have been a part of my life ever since Raycon first sent me a pair. I've never felt like I needed to look elsewhere for earbuds because the sound quality is just that good, and since they fit so well in my pocket, I can take them pretty much anywhere I want without having to untangle miles of cable on the other end. There haven't been too many places to go, but I wear them when cleaning the house, and frankly, that'll do me for now. Plus, with celebrity endorsements like Snoop Dogg and Mike Tyson, any onlookers you do stumble across in your everyday life are gonna know just from looking at you that you're matching your funky dance moves with some awesome looking earbuds. They start half the price of any other premium wireless earbuds on the market, but sound just as good, if not better, than other competitors. And they even come with a 45-day free return policy if you're not 100% satisfied with the earbuds. The latest model, the Everyday Earbuds, is the best that Raycon has ever put out, with 6 hours of playtime, flawless Bluetooth pairing, and a more compact pocket-fitting design. Plus, they fit so well in my ears that no amount of head shaking will dislodge them, which is always good to know. If this all sounds wonderful to you and you're desperate for an upgrade to your wireless earbud lifestyle that will also support my channel, then for a limited time you can go to buyraycon.com/rabbid to get 15% off your next order. That link is also in the video's description if, like me, you're too lazy to type all of that out. Thanks to Raycon again for sponsoring this video. Okay then, shall we pretend that characters are going to end up in video games? If we fully anticipate that most games that pull a character switch midway through a successful franchise aren't likely to make this a repeat occurrence outside of potentially creating a series of spin-off games, that should be enough to let a creative team go a little bit crazy with ideas. You don't have to hamstring yourself out of fear of disrupting established continuity if you're designing a game that likely exists outside of the recognized canon. There's a whole section of Japanese storytelling lingo dedicated to telling side stories that may or may not be canonical. So why not do something insane and follow the villain around for a bit? Give the player the chance to not just play as the bad guy, but as a villain they already know? Yeah, that'd be amazing! Who to pick though? Who would be a fun enough character to be worth making an entire game about? Cortex from Crash Bandicoot hasn't got much going on right now, so yeah, he'll do. Alright, so I haven't exactly picked Cortex out of nowhere, because at some point in history there were plans to make some kind of Cortex spin-off Crash Bandicoot game, but obviously this never happened. But maybe at some point there was a group of people, or, you know, publishers or marketeers who thought, hey, there's a gap for this, we could do something with that. And as recently as Crash Bandicoot 4, you were able to play as Cortex, and it's kind of a bit weird, but it kind of works. For its actual standalone game, it would be a little bit different than just Cortex pretending to be Crash Bandicoot with a laser gun. Although that is kinda cool. I'm sure you can ask the same question of an entire horde of video game villains and wonder why Bowser hasn't been given his own Overlord-style bad guy simulator, but it'd be hasty to dismiss Cortex's merits considering how he's been an ever-present component of Crash Bandicoot for over 2 decades. I especially love the dynamic he has with Crash, since it justifies their relationship without resorting to Cortex being unnecessarily evil just for the sake of it, which I feel you could use to explore his character if you're the sort of person who dedicates time to combing over the Crash Bandicoot wiki every day for plot details. A lot of the contenders for this video were debated against the thought of what it'd be like to play as them, and with Cortex getting a run out in Crash 4 and being a ton of fun to play as, it just got the gears in my brain turning about what more could be done to flesh this out for an entire video game. Considering he's a pretty smart scientist, you could very easily create some kind of run and gun title, or just Crash Bandicoot with a stronger emphasis on enemies so that Cortex has to rely a bit more on his arsenal of weapons instead of his athletic ability. Cortex Chaos never got very far off the ground since Traveller's Tales were too busy with Crash Twinsanity, but clearly there's something here begging to be made. Just another upside of Crash being brought back from the dead, I suppose. A lot of the hope in this video stems from a couple of video game franchises that have given the starring role to a side character fairly recently. Uncharted The Lost Legacy gave the reins over to Chloe Frazier, and it was basically the same kind of game, but, you know, just with a different protagonist. And even more recently than that, Half-Life Alyx came out of nowhere and put you in control of Alex Vance, and, you know, that was pretty fun. So, I remain fairly optimistic that one day my silly ideas may come true. Really, Uncharted The Lost Legacy had the kind of out-of-nowhere energy that I'd want channeled for half of the games on this video. It's maybe not as seamless a transition as Naughty Dog would have hoped for, since Chloe and Nadine are perfectly serviceable protagonists, but don't quite have the same charisma as Nathan Drake, although, frankly, few protagonists out there do. That's the thing though, you need to be choosing characters who have that little extra about them that can perform the lead role in a AAA video game, and when I think about the many ways in which Geralt makes The Witcher 3 such a fun experience, I'm left looking around for stand-ins who would be able to rise to the occasion in his place. However, The Witcher is slightly better equipped to deal with a sudden shortage of Geralt, given how well Ciri coped when thrust into the role of a playable character. Hey, she can take down werewolves, I reckon she'll do just fine. The only slight issue is how the Witcher games are created, because while there's a lot lifted from the books, they're more like fan interpretations of those stories, and it makes it a little tricky to extrapolate what is the canonical ending to The Witcher 3. Probably not the one where Ciri dies because you can't choose the right dialogue option, but maybe also not the one where she goes into politics and becomes an empress? It'd make for a worthwhile adventure, since if you canonize the ending where Ciri becomes a Witcher, you retain a lot of the abilities that Geralt uses throughout The Witcher 3, but with the added bonus of Ciri knowing how to use time travel and access other dimensions, so combat is a lot of fun, and would be amazing in a fully fleshed out video game. The added incentive is how CD Projekt Red have said that The Witcher 3 is Geralt's last adventure, and I reckon, considering how well received that game was, CD aren't completely done with this franchise and just need a new protagonist to play around with. Don't worry about Geralt when you've got a ready-made replacement that you can do whatever you want with. Just put more effort into it than you did with Cyberpunk. I don't need my Witcher games looking like soup. There's a lot of speculation and fantasizing over potential video games going on here, and I'm wondering where I should draw the line of what's realistic or not. Do I genuinely expect any of these solo adventures to come to any kind of fruition, or am I just throwing my wildest fantasies to a wall and see what sticks? I don't know, but I'm now going to talk about Metal Gear in a wistful but somehow hopeful way that something happens that has 100% no chance of happening. The future of this franchise is hopefully on permanent hiatus until the planets align and Hideo Kojima somehow returns to helm the ship he built 3.5 decades ago, but I love this franchise too much to not hope for something a bit more exciting. Metal Gear is married to exclusively having one of two variations of Snake as its protagonist, but I remember reading something somewhere ages ago that Konami should think about a spin-off game led by Revolver Ocelot, and hey, that might sound like making the villain the star of his own video game, but if you've ever played some of the more complicated Metal Gear games, you'll know that there's quite a lot to unpack with Ocelot. And we might as well stick it all in a video game that's never getting made. Snake in Metal Gear was only ever a few notches above being a blank self-insert protagonist who only really developed a concrete personality from MGS2 onwards, but Ocelot is a whole new ballgame who, seems to bounce between being a well-worn, battle-hardened, wise mentor figure to bragging about slamming long bullets into well-greased chambers. So I kind of want to see how he got there, and I also want to see what kind of game that would be, because it'd be fucking incredible. He is a cowboy pretending to be a spy. Yes, I want to play that. The more I spin the facts in my head, the more I think that Ocelot would carry a Metal Gear game and take it somewhere very different, but ultimately very entertaining. I keep coming back to gameplay style because Snake loves his stealth and his CQC and his handy-dandy cardboard box, and while it would be possible to palette swap Ocelot into a traditional Metal Gear game, the smarter move would be to give him the Metal Gear Rising treatment and design the game around his unique skill set. The man, unsurprisingly, has a thing for handguns and is so good at aiming and ricocheting his shots that he can hit people from around corners. It's been in my outro for years, you should know this. In the right hands and with the right kind of vision, you could easily create some kind of crazy shooter game that emphasizes trick shots that maybe also explores Ocelot's complicated past? He was at least a triple agent at some point in MGS3, and so he's got plenty of history to play around with, and perhaps it could help to bridge the gap from the man who makes cat noises on the regular to practically become a cowboy in the 5th game. Incidentally, MGS5 got an update 2 years after it first came out that let you play as Ocelot in online FOB missions, and yes, you can ricochet bullets with his special revolver. Yes, please, more of that. I'll enjoy this game as a concept in my mind where it'll stay forever. I'd rather play an imaginary game than more zombies. Following on from E3, we stand at the precipice of Smash Ultimate's Fighter Pass, and the inevitable fact that we've got one more fighter to speculate over, and then that's probably it. That's bizarre to think about after so many years of fan theories of what characters Masahiro Sakurai would prefer to add and who would be more likely to join the roster. We're one announcement away from not having to worry about it until Nintendo decide that they want a new Smash Bros. Game, whenever the hell that is. I reckon they have to go out with a bang and announce either one of the highly anticipated characters like Crash Bandicoot, or something completely left field and weird, which will probably just upset the internet, but that kinda happens anyway. Or maybe Sakurai will surprise the entire internet and put Waluigi in the game after all. More than he is already? Although maybe we'd be better off finding a game concept that suits Waluigi as a protagonist and not just a piece of the background for filling out rosters of party and sports games. It's a tricky problem to solve because of the comparisons you can make with Wario that don't flatter Waluigi at all. Because I can understand why Waluigi has been pushed to the side considering he's just an evil version of Luigi, a character who Nintendo has historically pushed out the limelight and into a corner of Mario Party 9's box art. At this point, it's almost an in-joke that Waluigi is only ever wheeled out for any multiplayer Mario game, but I honestly think he's too recognisable to keep him reserved to this extent. The issue is what to do with him, because platformers are locked down by the usual Mario crew and puzzle games would be too close to Wario's turf. But I reckon some kind of stealth action title where you sneak around causing mischief and being the kind of villain that Waluigi thinks he is. I think that'd be a lot of fun and something that Nintendo doesn't really have covered by another one of their mascots. I know they don't want to celebrate or glorify villains too much, but I think there's way too much potential for a Waluigi-led video game, especially because we're at a point now where such an announcement would be massive news, and it would probably market itself. Then hey, maybe then he'd deserve to be in Smash Bros. Dress for the job you want, not the one you have right now. You can argue that Waluigi has legacy on his side since he's been around for a couple of decades and is overdue a solo game, but if you want to play that game, we can quickly take things to the logical extreme by looking at The Legend of Zelda. This franchise is 35 years old this year and has been around the block for so long that it often feels like it's done virtually everything, especially with how Breath of the Wild returned to its roots with the whole open world setup. Before this game came out, a lot of people bought into it being a fresh start for The Legend of Zelda, as far as wanting to see Link benched as the playable character in favour of giving Zelda some long overdue time as the main protagonist, but ultimately Nintendo went in the more predictable direction and we're back making the same predictions for the sequel. Can you see a pattern yet? I can see a pattern. Clearly, the public want to play as Princess Zelda, and given how long this franchise has been going on for, and how her name is in the title, it's not hard to see why. Not only that, but it speaks to the evolution of this franchise and how Zelda's role has slowly evolved with the rise of 3D video games, since now she's less of a sprite acting as the end game goal that players should strive to save, and more like an actual developed character with, at the very least, a warm personality, but quite often a set of abilities that would make playing as her a completely new experience for this franchise. I mean, Link has used spells before, and I guess has been somewhat stealthy in the past, but games like Hyrule Warriors and Smash Bros have shown what a world would be like if Princess Zelda and Sheik were playable, and to be honest, I don't want any alternative. She's done her work as a damsel in distress, and I want Nintendo to give her the Princess Peach treatment and give her her own quest. I don't know if you'd need to be as blunt as Super Princess Peach was and put Link behind bars to give Zelda some motivation, but I reckon you've got enough to work with without pretending that her power comes from her emotions. Call it Legend of Link if you have to. This is RabbidLuigi, and this whole video has been defined by iconic characters doing really well for themselves despite not being the centre of attention, and while there's definitely a risk involved in giving them more of the limelight, Princess Zelda is an utterly iconic character all the way through, and I don't think there's much risk involved really in trying to create some kind of spin-off Zelda franchise. And I don't mean the CDI game where you control something that apparently resembles Zelda in a game that no one really remembers or cares about. It's not even the funny CDI game, it's just kind of tragic. I like to think these days, many decades later, we have slightly higher standards now. Hi, just want to give a quick shout out to some of my top supporters on Patreon. We have Ramon Alberto, Jerome Kiryu, Fusion Warrior, Sarah Malion, Christopher Robinson, Joe Creamer, Scott Riker, Frank Guillong, I think, I'm so sorry, The Green Scorpion, Devon Hutt, and Ferretto. Thank you all for supporting what I do on YouTube, and if you want to join them, you can go to patreon.com/RabbidLuigi, where I post updates and behind the scenes stuff, and we generally have a really good time. Also, what topic would you like to see me cover next? Leave your suggestion in a comment on this video, because I'll be taking the best ideas and making a poll on my community tab, which you can then vote on to decide what the next video is about. I'll be announcing the winner of the poll over on my Twitter, so make sure you follow me so you don't miss out. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.